Hi, in this video we're going to look at solving equations by factorising. So we're going to have two halves to this. The easier half is when you've only got one x squared. So something like x squared plus 10x plus 21 equals to 0. So in solving any quadratic equations, your first step must be to make sure it equals 0. If not, you'll need to rearrange it. So first we need to factorise this. To factorise it, we want to find two numbers that multiply to give us a last number, this is 21. And the same two numbers must also add together to give us 10, this middle number. So in this case, this isn't too hard. Those numbers are just 7 and 3. What this tells us, this tells us how it will factorise into x plus 7 and x plus 3. Now we've factorised it, we just need to solve each bracket equal to 0. So either x plus 7 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. And I give the two solutions. X is either minus 7 or x is minus 3. Okay, let's do that idea again. So these get slightly harder if we start to use minus numbers. Okay, so you've got x squared plus x minus 6 is 10. The idea is conceptually the same. We want two numbers that multiply to give us our last number. That is now minus 6. And they need to add together to give us our middle number. This is always how many x's we have. Again, if there's no number here, that means that numbers are 1. So now students multiply together to give us minus 6 and add to give us plus 1. This is slightly harder to work out. Because we're multiplying to give minus 6, it means 1 must be positive and 1 must be negative. And these numbers are 3 and minus 2. And then again, it's just like before. That tells us how this factorises into x plus 3x minus 2, which give us the two solutions. Either this equals 0, so x equals minus 3, or this equals 0, so x is plus 2. Okay, and that's the basic idea for the easier half. Two numbers multiply to give you the last number and add to give you the middle number. We're going to focus mainly on the harder style of questions. What makes it different is we're going to have a 2x squared or a 3x squared or something x squared. Okay? The idea is going to be the same though. First, we're going to want to factorise it, which I'll get onto in a second, and then again, we'll solve each bracket equal to 0. So here you would have this bottom one nice and straightforward. That would give us x equals minus 2. Solve on the top one. We first get 2x equals to minus 3, which therefore means x is going to be minus 3 over 2. So, focusing on the method, the way we're going to do this is, if it's something we want to factorise, the key thing is to realise basically how to split up the middle term into two smaller terms. From there, we're then going to basically do a reverse grid, where you basically fill out all the numbers you've got in the middle of my grid, and then work out what must have gone around the outside to give me those numbers inside the grid. And that will then tell us how this factorises. So let's go through all the steps we need to do in order to do that. So the key thing here is basically how do we split up the 7x into two small numbers so we can do this previous trick of filling in this grid here. So there's a few steps to it. Let's go through that example. Step 1, we need to multiply and find the numbers. So you basically need to multiply the first and last number together. So 2 times 6 is 12. We want to find two numbers that multiply to give us that 12. And also two numbers that add to give us our middle number, which in this case is 7. Again, this isn't too hard. These two are just 4 and 3. Now in this case, what's that telling us? That is going to tell us how we need to split up this 7x. So we need to copy down our original equation, and we're going to split up the 7x into 4x and 3x. So that's our second step. Once we've done that, we then need to grid it out. So normally use these grids for expanding brackets. We also use it for factorising. Key thing is we need to fill this in the middle. So 2x squared, 4x, 3x and 6. And then work out what must have gone around the outside. So here we can see I've got a common factor of x and x only. Here I've got a common factor of 2. Everything there divided by 2. Here the common factor is x and 2. 2 goes into all of this and so does x. So it's going to be 2x. And here the common factor is 3. So So those numbers are telling us how it factorises. So this factorises into 2x plus 3 and x plus 2 equals to 0. Then step 4, we then solve each bracket equal to 0. So either 2x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. And that gives us our two solutions. So this video is basically focused on this technique. Okay, it's not the easiest, quite a few steps to it, but once you learn it will help with a lot of different questions, because a lot of the GCSE is about solving quadratics in different forms. So let's try the same idea again. Step 1, when you multiply the first and last number together. We then want two numbers that are going to multiply to give us this new total, and also two numbers need to add to give us the middle number, in this case a 9. This one isn't too bad, that is just 4 and 5. Again, what this is telling us, this tells us how we need to split up this middle 9x. So you always split up the middle term. So now it's going to be 2x squared, and the numbers were 4 and 5. So plus 4x plus 5x plus 10 equals 0. Now we've got that split, we can then fill in the grid. So we fill in the middle of those 4 terms. Then work out what must have gone around the outside. That needs to be an x, that can be a 2, that can be 2x, and this can be a 5. So we're going to basically factorise in those pairs of terms, seeing basically what's in common for both of them. That now tells us how it factorises. So now we have factorised it, we then need to solve each bracket equal to 0. So here we've either got that 2x plus 5 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, I'm going to do the easy one first. This tells us x is minus 2. This tells us that 2x must be minus 5, so therefore x will be minus 5 over 2. Okay, that's the basic idea. It can get slightly harder in the case we throw in negative numbers. They're still the same idea, just a bit more awkward to work out. So I'm going to go through 2 more examples that use negative numbers. So again, all the steps are going to be exactly the same. So 2 times minus 15, now this number is minus 15, not 15. It means I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me minus 30 now. And they need to add to give me this number. Again, if there's no number here for how many x's we've got, that means that number is a 1. So I want 2 numbers that add to give me minus 1. Again, note we need this minus sign to go in here. Work this out again, isn't super easy. One of them will be negative. In my head, I look for 2 numbers multiplied to give me 30 with a difference of 1, and that gives me 6 and 5. That tells me the 2 numbers are 6 and 5. And looking at the signs, we can tell we must have a minus 6 and a plus 5 in order to add to give me minus 1. So that's my first step done. And again, that tells us how that middle term, that middle minus 1x, is going to split up into. So now that minus x becomes minus 6x plus 5x. Now onto the slightly easier step, we can just grid that out. And that allows us to factorise it fairly easily. So here's going to be an x. Here we've got 2x. Note down here, we have this minus sign everywhere. That means it's going to be a minus here. And the common factor of 6x and 15 is 3. And here we can see a 5. So basically you only need a minus if both these terms are minuses typically. Okay, that tells us how it factorises. This factorises into 2x plus 5, x minus 3 equals 0. Then just as before, we are going to solve each equation equal to 0. So either this equals 0 or this equals 0, which gives us our 2 solution. Here x will be minus 5 over 2 again, and here x will be plus 3. Okay, just one more example of that same idea. It's a fairly big idea and it's quite easy to get confused by it. So step 1, you multiply. So again, this method works exactly the same if we have a 3x squared rather than a 2x squared. So here 2 numbers multiply that need to give us minus 24, because it's minus 8 times 3. And 2 numbers that add to give me 2, because we have a 2x here. Again, because this is a minus, that means 1 is positive and 1 is negative. Again, I look for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 24 but have a difference of 2. those numbers are 6 and 4. Because I need to add to give me plus 2, that means I want plus 6 and minus 4. Okay, again, that tells us how that 2x squared in the middle needs to split. So now it's 3x squared plus 6x minus 4x minus 8 equals 0. I then need to grid that out. And then just fill everything in. So that's going to be an x. Here are my common factors 2. Here we've got 3x. Here, because these are both minus, it's going to be minus 4 there. So the minus things can be a bit confusing. Occasionally you get a grid that looks something like this, just make it up for random. When you've got minuses here but a plus here, the way that works, that means both of these are going to be minus numbers. So it's like minus 4 and minus 3. Okay? But typically it's phased to work out where the minus is going to go. So we've done that. We can now solve this. We can now factorize it. So it's going to be x plus 2, 3x minus 4 equals to 0. Solving each bracket equal to 0. That means x is either minus 2. Solving this, I get 3x equals to 4. So therefore x is going to be 4 over 3. And that's the basic idea. Typically the hardest step everyone seems to find is basically finding these two numbers that work here. Again, the more practice you do, the easier it comes. You always basically want to look for pairs of numbers that multiply to give you 24 and go from there. That's probably the easiest place to start. Hope that helped and good luck.